Welcome to The Critique. Today we're looking at a script for a video essay called Love Didn't Evolve to Make You Happy.
Right, it dives into the evolutionary biology of romance, attraction, all that good stuff.
It's a really strong foundation. Let's get right into the analysis and see how we can make it even better.
I'm ready. It's a fascinating topic, that blend of hard science and, very human experience. Let's sharpen it up.
So a key theme I'm seeing is this tension between the chaos of biological attraction, the dopamine and all that, and the actual craft of long-term love.
Yes, and the script paints this vivid picture of love as an ancient survival code in that first half.
It really does. It's an incredibly gripping setup.
It is. Which makes me wonder, though, have we considered how that high-stakes framing actually pays off later in the script?
Let's look at that. Our first major point for improvement seems to be about tonal consistency.
Exactly. It's about that biological trap narrative that gets established so powerfully at the beginning.
The argument starts out describing love as, a drug, an illness, a survival mechanism.
But it wraps up with advice on maintenance. And that's where the weakness is. The script builds this high-stakes, almost cynical premise, love is a trap, but then resolves it with pretty standard, gentle relationship advice.
And that weakens the initial hook.
It really does. You get this disjointed feeling, the transition from love is a drug, this brain chemistry gone wild metaphor, to the love is a habit or love is a choice frame. It feels off.
The intensity promises this radical deconstruction.
Right, and then the conclusion is what? Make coffee, say thank you, try new thing. It feels too safe. It's completely disconnected from that biological imperative you just described.
So the danger you establish early on just kind of evaporates?
It just vanishes instead of being resolved. It's like starting a thriller and ending in a romantic comedy. The payoff doesn't match the setup.
The monster isn't in the room anymore.
Precisely. So how do we fix that while, keeping the practical advice?
That's the key question.
Well, the suggestion is to maintain that biological survival lens through the entire piece, even when you're giving the practical advice.
So you frame the maintenance of a relationship not just as effort.
Exactly. You frame it as hacking the evolutionary code that we just spent 10 minutes describing in terrifying detail.
I can see that. Can you give me a concrete example of how that would look?
Sure. So instead of just saying novelty fuels dopamine and suggesting, a new recipe,
or a different route to the park, yeah.
You frame it as tricking the brain into believing the relationship is new again to prevent the prefrontal cortex from taking over completely. It's not just a date night. It's a neurological override.
That keeps the stakes really high.
It does. Or another example, that erotic paradox from Esther Perel that's mentioned.
The need for space and mystery.
Right. Link that directly back to the ancient survival code. Frame it not just as psychological advice, but as mimicking the hunter-gatherer pursuit dynamic that the brain is hardwired to reward. You're actively manipulating your own biology.
Okay, but what about the smaller stuff? Like the script says, making coffee, saying thank you.
That's the part that feels the most jarringly safe right now. You could rewrite that whole section on small gestures as microdosing oxytocin.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you're microdosing oxytocin to counteract the withdrawal symptoms of fading dopamine. You keep that chemical, that addiction metaphor running right into the last sentence.
So if love is an addiction,
Then the maintenance phase is essentially pain management or dosage regulation. It's not just being polite.
that creates a much stronger through line. It turns the advice into a secret manual for the machine, not just, good manners.
Exactly. It respects the audience who clicked for the evolutionary biology, not a lifestyle blog post. It keeps that medical thriller vibe.
Okay, moving on. The material really props up its arguments with experts like Dr. Helen Fisher and Esther Perel. These are heavy hitters.
They are, and the script uses them well, but individually. And that, I think, brings us to our second critique.
Which is?
The critique is about synthesizing expert voices versus just, citing.
Okay, so what I like here is that the author has clearly done the reading. We've got Fisher on brain scans, Perel on psychology.
It's all laid out, but I wonder if the script is relying on them as separate pillars rather than mixing their, potentially conflicting views into a new, unified argument.
Go on.
Well, here's the weak. The script presents Helen Fisher, neuroscience, biology, and Esther Perel, psychology, sociology, in sequence. It's almost like distinct chapters.
So Fisher explains why we fall in love.
The dopamine, the drive, yes. And Perel explains how to stay in love, the space, the mystery. It completely misses the opportunity to explore the tension between our hardwired biology from Fisher
and our modern psychological needs from Perel.
It's like a relay race where they pass the baton, not a debate.
That's a perfect way to put it. So the suggestion here is to place these two perspectives in direct dialogue, or even in conflict,
So don't just report what they say, analyze where they might disagree.
or where the biology makes the psychology really, really difficult.
That sounds so much more dynamic. How would that actually look in the script?
So for a concrete example, you could explicitly contrast Fisher's mating drive, which wants to bond quickly for, reproduction,
Closeness, yeah.
with Perel's erotic space, which needs distance. The script could flat out ask, does our biology actively fight our psychological need for desire? That frames the struggle of long-term love as a war between two different systems.
That creates a ton of narrative tension. It's not a lecture anymore, it's a conflict.
Exactly. Or another way, with the imago concept that's mentioned. When the script talks about falling for someone who completes a story, that psychological framing,
Right.
you should question if that's really just the brain seeking the path of least resistance. A specific dopamine trigger based on childhood. You look at the psychology through the lens of the biology.
Merging the two languages.
Yes, and one more. Instead of just quoting Perel saying sex is a place we go, you could juxtapose that with Fisher's finding that the prefrontal cortex shuts down.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? You ask, is that place we go just a state of reduced cognitive inhibition? Is Perel's poetic place actually just Fisher's dimmer switch on judgment?
That's fascinating. It elevates the script from a summary of ideas to a new, original synthesis of them. It's not just here's what experts say, it's here's what happens when these truths collide.
It makes the script feel proprietary, not just a book report.
That actually leads us nicely towards the end of the script. The argument seems to end on this idea that love is messy, miraculous, but ultimately one of the most human things we do.
And that brings us to our third critique, the so what and the conclusion.
It's a very poetic ending. To love is to be alive.
It is poetic, and it makes sense, but couldn't the evidence also support a more provocative conclusion?
You think it's too soft?
I do.
Here's the weakness. The conclusion settles for a platitude after spending 15 minutes arguing that love is a specific, calculable, evolutionary mechanism.
It undermines the scientific rigor.
Completely. If love is systems, hormones, habits, which the script explicitly states, the ending should reflect that mechanical reality. It shouldn't just revert to poetic abstraction. To end with, it's just being human, feels like letting all the air out of the balloon.
It feels like a default setting, a safety net.
It is. So the suggestion is that the conclusion has to answer the question from the title. If love didn't evolve to make us happy, then what should we do with that information?
The ending needs to be more actionable.
And intellectually braver. So instead of a warm hug, you give them a marching order or a tool.
Let's hear some examples.
Okay, one idea. Propose a conclusion that embraces the unhappiness of love. If it wasn't designed for happiness, but for survival, argue that we should stop expecting constant happiness and see friction as a sign the system is working.
That's a powerful pivot. Your unhappiness isn't a failure, it's a feature.
Precisely. Or another angle, end on the concept of conscious override. If the prefrontal cortex dims during love, as Fisher said, then the act of long-term love is the act of turning that light back on.
So you're choosing the person despite the lack of chemical coercion.
It transforms love from a feeling into an act of rebellion against our own biology.
I love that. Love is a rebellion against evolution.
Or to keep the machine metaphor going, instead of love is a mystery, end with love is a machine. You are the operator. Learn the control.
That is so much sharper.
It empowers the listener. It gives them something that feels earned by the science they just sat through. It says, now that you know how the engine works, here's how you drive the car.
Let's step back a bit to the middle section. There's a segment on the imago concept and childhood patterns.
Right, how we fall for people who remind us of our caregivers, the unfinished stories and familiar chaos.
Yeah, and that brings us to our fourth critique, structural focus and the imago detour.
Is the connection between that and evolutionary biology really established here, or does it dilute the focus?
That's the core question.
And here's the weakness. The imago section introduces a really complex psychoanalytic concept, Freudian Jungian roots, into a script that's primarily about evolutionary biology and neuroscience.
It shows up late, and it isn't given much room to breathe.
It just muddies the water. Is love ancient chemistry, like the intro says, or is it childhood trauma? By trying to do both without a clear bridge, it dilutes the primary focus.
It feels like we stepped out of the lab and onto a therapist's couch for 2 minutes and then right back to the lab.
Exactly. It breaks the immersion of that biological evolutionary frame. So the suggestion is you either cut the imago section to keep the focus tight on neuroscience, or you have to rigorously explain the neuroscience of the imago, make it fit the universe of the script.
Okay, so if we keep it, how do we make it fit?
You have to biologize the psychology. If you keep it, explain how the brain encodes early care. Does that familiar chaos release a specific chemical marker the brain confuses for safety?
So you could frame childhood patterns as neural ruts?
Neural ruts. Yes! Pathways worn deep by repetition that the adult brain slips into because it conserves energy, which is a survival instinct. That's a biological explanation, not just emotional storytelling.
Neural ruts fits perfectly with the talk of pathways and circuits.
It does. And if the author decides to cut it, which honestly might be the cleaner option,
It might be.
they could use that saved space to expand on the lust versus love brain scan differences. That's mentioned, but it moves on very quickly. Expanding there would just reinforce the core scientific thesis.
I agree. Focus on where the script really wins, which is the love as a biological mechanism angle.
This has been a really productive teardown. We've hit on tone, expert synthesis, the conclusion, and the structural focus.
We have. And the underlying asset here, the research, the writing, it's very strong. The script is vivid. Love isn't just a feeling, it's an evolutionary trap. I mean, that's a fantastic line.
It is. We just want the rest of the script to live up to that level of intensity.
Absolutely. It's about making sure the promise from the first minute is kept all the way to the last second.
Let's recap the main actionable takeaways for the author.
Sounds good.
First, maintain that survival addiction metaphor through all the practical advice. Don't let the danger evaporate. Frame kindness as dosing or hacking.
Second,
Synthesize the experts. Put Fisher and Perel in a debate. Contrast the biological drive for bonding with the psychological need for distance.
and the third point,
Sharpen the conclusion. Move beyond love is human. Answer the prompt from your title. If it's not for happiness, tell us what it is for and how we operate the machine.
and finally,
Align or remove the imago section. Either explain the neuroscience of the neural ruts or cut it to focus more deeply on the brain chemistry.
excellent. This script has so much potential to be not just educational, but transformative for a listener. It just needs that extra layer of cohesive framing.
I completely agree. The raw materials are all there. It just needs a final tighten of the bolts.
To the listener who submitted this, thank you so much for sharing your work. It's a compelling piece with a strong hook. We would love to see how you handle these adjustments. Please rework the script and submit it again for a follow-up.
We want to see this evolutionary trap snap shut perfectly. Keep writing.
That's it for this edition of The Critique. We'll see you next time.